And I am here today with Alex Sazama of Hospitality Democracy, and particularly today, Onesto. So, hi, Alex. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. How are things at Onesto these days in our weird, weird world?
Well, all things considered, things are going great here. We've done a number of things to adapt as best we can and really take care of our staff and the customers. And so it's been very well received thus far.
Yeah. Now you guys are open in some capacity. What are you guys offering in terms of ways to get a hold of your food?
We're currently at 50% capacity. We do take out, dine in. We have expanded our patio offering to allow for more outdoor seating. And we have also taken our event space, which is located upstairs, and converted it into normal seating as well when we do not have any sort of events.
Oh, okay. So there's plenty of room for people to be spread out and dine safely, kind of around the property. So,
Yep.
And menu-wise, are people expecting kind of the same seasonal menu that you would have normally at this time of year?
Yeah. So right before everything happened, we were already working on our seasonal menu changes. So we haven't skipped a beat as far as that goes. We're still playing with all the fun seasonal ingredients that are coming in. We just had Italian summer black truffles last weekend, and so
Beautiful.
we're really mixing things up.
Yeah. And do you have a garden again this year?
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
Oh, do you have a garden again this year? I know you had a little patio garden for a while.
Yeah, I had to start everything from seedlings at home, but yeah, we're running the same sort of garden that we have, so we're expecting yields to start coming in at probably the middle of the next month.
Well, that's fun because I think that's always great. Like I know the harvest season isn't quite here yet, but little things are probably coming in like herbs.
Yep, herbs. We have a number of tomatoes on the vines currently, so those should be ripening up by the middle of the month.
Yeah, I'm getting excited. That's about where my tomatoes are as well, and I'm watching them sort of start to turn, and waiting for that first one. So, awesome. Yeah, for people who don't know, Onesto has like a little secret garden on their kind of their back. It's like a second floor patio type space, and you've been up in the ante on that for a couple of years.
Yeah, every year we go ahead and do a little bit of an expansion. With the exception of this year, we are just happy to be able to get it up and running.
Yeah. So, but what people are really here for is you and your cooking. So, what are you treating people to today? What are you making?
So we're going to run through what we call our mushroom ragu. So we're going to build the ragu using a couple of different mushrooms that are locally cultivated, and then we're also going to go ahead and make some scratch-made gnocchi.
Okay. Now, when I think ragu, I think of something that cooks for a really long time. Is this that sort of a ragu, or is it something a little bit simpler?
So yes and no. For today's version, we're doing a little bit of a speedier rendition of it, but typically you're right. It is something that in the restaurant we're adding liquid, reducing, adding liquid, reducing multiple times to get to the final product.
Okay, and this is something that people can make at home. We'll be posting the recipe along with the video, kind of after the video is done, so people can look forward to that. And I want to let people know who are watching right now that we will also take your questions along the way as you watch Chef Sazama cook. You can feel free to post your questions, and I will make sure that he answers them. So, what do we do first? Where do we start?
So I've just got the pan heating up. We can kind of run through the ingredients that I have in front of me. So I have a bit of mirepoix, so carrots, celery, and onions. I have 3 types of mushrooms: shiitake, cremini, and oyster. I have bay leaf, a little bit of thyme, some Marzano tomatoes, tomato paste, a little bit of salted butter, some veggie stock, some red wine, and then other assorted seasonings.
Okay. Yeah, so these are all things that people should be able to get pretty easily, even if they don't have them already in their kitchens. So
yeah, and the big goal, one of the goals, one Onesto is that we pride ourselves on being an ingredient-driven kitchen, and really utilizing simple ingredients, but really taking the time to prepare them in a way that is just exceptional.
Yeah. So we have a big pan heated.
Yeah.
Now,
So,
what kind of temperature are we working with?
normally I'd go ahead and do it in kind of like a larger stock pot, but I felt as though, with the time restrictions, and you'll be able to see me kind of cook things a little bit better than you normally would be able to with a different style pot. So first we're going to start with the olive oil, and we're going to take our mirepoix and add this to the pan.
And this is probably medium high heat. What are you?
Yeah, medium high heat. So we're just going to go ahead and kind of cook this until the onions become translucent, and then we're going to go ahead and transfer it to a bowl while we allow our mushrooms to caramelize afterwards. So the big key in a lot of what we do, and especially what we're doing today, is that we're going to be building layers of flavor, which is something that the Italians are just fantastic at.
Yes. Well, and the trick with this, like whenever I cook mushrooms that are part of a big dish, I sort of always scoff, because I hate having to, you usually want to cook the onions or whatever you're cooking in that sort of vein first, and then take them out of the pan and put the mushrooms in, because I've done it both ways, and if you put them all in, there's too much moisture and you don't get like that beautiful browned exterior on the mushrooms, and that's flavor, right? So it's worth that. It's totally worth that extra step, is what I'm gleaning.
Well, and also every step of the way, as we take our carrots out, we add more oil, and then we do our mushrooms, and then we take our mushrooms out, and then we start toasting tomato paste and deglazing the pan. All of that rich flavor that is caramelized into the bottom of the pan is going to go right into that ragu.
Yeah. Yes. So no obsessive cleaning here either. Like, don't go rinsing out that pan, because there's good stuff in there.
We're almost there. We're cooking on induction, which is I would say, it's quite efficient.
Pretty fast, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're not, typically this would be a 3-4 minute process.
Yeah. I mean, we would normally be about 3 or 4 minutes.
So.
Also, I'm not worried about undercooking it, because, again, it's going to come back in. I'm starting to get a nice little sear on the carrots as well. But everything goes back together, and we're going to be reducing it down. And again, depending on the size of the batch, this is 1/6 of what I would normally make in the restaurant. So you would cook it almost double the time if you're going to double the recipe. I'm going to go ahead and transfer this right now. There's a little bit left, that's okay. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and move on to phase 2. I like to add a little bit of extra oil, because the mushrooms are really going to soak that up. So in no particular order, I'm going to put all of our mushrooms in.
Yeah, and just review for me what kind of mushrooms we're using again.
Alright, so we have oyster mushrooms, shiitake, and cremini.
Okay.
We do source those locally from a company called River Valley Ranch. Located in New Berlin.
Yes, and if people want to actually buy their mushrooms, they sell through the Farmers Alliance is, I believe, what it's called, and they're an online purveyor. I think you can also find them at a few farmers markets potentially, or on their website. So that's a good option. Now, if somebody didn't have the variety of mushrooms, what's your sense of, if I just made this with like all cremini mushrooms, am I going to get an okay result?
So here's the thing I'll always encourage, and the thing that I love most about cooking is that every recipe is made to be changed, and there are certain rules out there that can be broken. You can use whatever mushroom you want. I would not recommend putting morel in it. However, using all cremini or all shiitake or whatever is readily available for you will produce the same result.
Yeah. You'll still get a lot of that same earthy flavor.
Absolutely.
Okay. And using a variety gives you kind of nuances, I would think, and textures that you might not get from one mushroom, but the dish is not going to hurt if you only have one.
The texture is important, and that is why we did select 3 separate kinds of mushrooms. Because a traditional ragu is typically made with a ground meat, but we wanted to make our version of a ragu that is vegetarian.
Sure. Now, if someone is not fond of mushrooms, is this flexible enough where if you wanted to use beef in the recipe, that you could probably just adjust that, the one ingredient?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those people, but I do know there are some non-mushroom people in my life, so
Sure.
always
So all of that oil that I put into that pan has been essentially soaked up by the mushrooms. I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit more here. And then I'm also going to go ahead and start salting the mushrooms as well to draw out a little bit of the moisture.
And at what stage do you typically salt? Because you don't want to do it right away.
No, because I guess I am a huge fan of salt. Some people think I'm crazy, but I'm very much so for aggressively seasoning. So you will see me salt this multiple times. I'm never satisfied with the first salting, but also, as you can see, after I put the oil in and the salt, the mushrooms are really glistening at this point. Now there's something for the salt to kind of adhere to. I'm also using a kosher salt so that once it hits the heat, it's kind of glazing over the mushrooms itself as well, rather than like an iodized, which is just a little bit too powerful for my taste. And what we're doing is not delicate enough for me to want to use a sea salt.
Yeah. Well, and that's one big trick that I've learned in the kitchen is, kosher salt has a very different level of salty than a typical like table salt or iodized salt. So once you switch over to kosher, you can definitely layer on salt without making it too salty. Yeah.
All right, so we are almost to the point where we're going to move on to the next step. We're starting to get some really nice caramelization on all the mushrooms here. And I'm not looking to fully cook the mushrooms. I'm just looking to kind of get a nice little brown coating over the outside of it before I transfer it to the pot with the mirepoix. And then we're going to start working on our next layers of flavor here.
Okay. Yeah, there's a beautiful sizzle. And my guess is that the smell coming off of that pan is awesome right now.
Yeah, this is just amazing. It's something about a shiitake mushroom has just got such a unique smell to it. All right, we're going to go ahead and remove this. All right. Go ahead and turn the heat back on here, and we're going to start working on the next portion, which is going to be, we're going to take some of the tomato paste and we're just going to toast it. The pan's pretty hot, so this is going to move fairly quickly for us here.
And now for people who don't know, what does that do for tomato paste?
It's just going to give it a deeper and richer taste to the overall dish.
Does it kind of caramelize sugars and give it a little sweetness? Is that...
Sure. Yep. Okay. But you don't want to take it too far to where you burn it.
Yeah. Yes, this isn't a Cajun Creole recipe where you want to. Is it called pincing? Maybe. I think there's a term for kind of hard cooking your tomato paste.
Yep. All right, so I'm almost satisfied with the toasting here. It's sticking to the bottom of the pan, which is a pretty good indication that we are to the point where we can kind of start moving on to the next portion. So what I'm going to do first here is I'm going to actually deglaze the pan with some red wine. I happen to be using a Burgundy.
Mm-hmm.
You can really use whatever you have in the house at the time, as long as you don't put a Barolo in there.
Don't wait. Yeah, don't waste your wonderful $40+ wines, right?
Yes. So as we continue, we will continue to stir this. The tomato paste is going to go ahead and get broken up into the wine as well. So don't have to be too worried about necessarily getting that all whisked together. The tomato paste is also going to act as a thickener. So I don't want this to get too thick on me too fast. So we have a couple more ingredients that we're going to go ahead and add. Really, I just add the wine so that I can get anything that was caramelized in the bottom of the pan off of the pan before we continue to move forward, so I don't need to worry about burning anything. So the next ingredients we're going to put in are some San Marzano tomatoes.
Are those whole broken up?
Those are whole. We'll just kind of break them up a little bit. Again, as they cook, as we continue to cook this thing as a whole, it will also continue to break down. I also am a firm believer that a little bit of chunkiness in your sauce is beneficial to the overall eating. And the next portion I have here is a veg stock. We're just going to
And when you have vegetable stock, I'm sure you're making your own. What are the key components for you for vegetable stock?
So we make a couple of different kinds, but as far as key components go, we're looking at, I use the onion skins, carrots, celery, salt, water. That's pretty much it. And then sometimes too, we're putting some of our parsley or some of our other herbs in there as well, thyme stems.
Yeah. So, and vegetable stock is actually remarkably easy to make because I think the flavors come out of those vegetables faster than a meat-based stock. Is my impression okay? So if you wanted to tackle that at home, it's a much quicker proposition.
Yeah, and I would always encourage, if you have a lot of scraps at home, that you do save those, because once you make the stock, you can go ahead and just freeze that, and you never know when you're going to be making a soup of some kind or a risotto, and you'll be able to have that ingredient, that great ingredient, to be able to add, in my opinion, a far superior flavor comparative to something you would buy in the store.
Yeah.
So we're at the point now where we're going to go ahead, we're going to add some bay leaf in. I've also got some fresh thyme, and what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of rip some of the leaves off here. If there's a little bit of stem in there, that's okay. You'll be able to take that out in the end. And then we're going to go ahead and start adding in a couple of other seasonings. So one of my favorites is Fennel Seed, and I really like Fennel Seed.
Love it.
It's commonly used in sausage, and one of the things that I like, or one of the illusions that I like to play, is that kind of that flavor of meat but not being meat, that depth of meat but it not being meat. And mushrooms are a really great way of being able to do something like that and create that illusion for your guests.
Yeah,
Also
definitely.
going to add
Well,
a
and
little bit
fennel is such a classic flavor in Italian food that, like, you can't go wrong with it either way.
Totally agree. Totally agree. So we added a little bit of red pepper flake just because I like a little bit of heat, and we're going to add our mushrooms and your right back in here. And then we're going to let that simmer. here's the thing too. Now at this point, you know, if you are moving on to making gnocchi like we are, or you have to make boiled pasta or whatever, you can just lower this to a low simmer and let this cook for hours. If it gets too far reduced, you can add water to it or more stock and allow it to reduce that flavor, and the depth is just going to get more intense throughout that cooking process.
Awesome. So, and Alex, for cooking this at home, I know you said that like normally you cook this in a larger stock pot for volume, and that the saute pan was kind of in part to show people, you know, to be able to show people what you were doing. But would you recommend? I mean, cooking a small amount in a bigger, squattier pan, kind of like, I feel like the process goes a little bit faster, and so that would be totally admissible for doing at home.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's really what you're more comfortable with. If I'm cooking at home, I prefer this. I prefer a little bit more room. But if I'm cooking for a lot of people and I have a lot of pans, something that's a little bit squattier and taller would be my preference at that point. Okay. All right. So at this point, we're just going to continue to allow this to simmer. Our final step for this will be coming back, salting it again, and adding a little bit of butter, just to have some fat to it. The fat's going to also allow, or it's going to help. It helps everything. Fat is great in food, but it's going to help coat the gnocchis as well once we get to the final step. So we're just going to lower the heat and let this do its thing, and we're going to go ahead and move over to our gnocchi at this point. So what you haven't seen here because of TV magic is that we cooked some russet potatoes today. We don't boil them, we roast them. So we wash them really good, roast them at super high heat, so 500 degrees for about 45 minutes until the outsides get crispy. And then we go ahead, we scoop that out, we rice it, or you can, if you do not have a ricer, you can beat it against the bowl for a good amount of time, and that's going to have kind of the same effect. The nice thing about a ricer is that you're not going to end up with clumpy potatoes when it comes to when you're eating your gnocchi. Our gnocchi is a bit different than maybe you have had at other restaurants. The goal with our gnocchi is to be very light, airy pillows, as opposed to maybe a more dense style gnocchi.
Yeah.
So this then, once we get there, once we make the mix and roll it out, there are a couple of different cooking applications that you can take. And the great thing about this recipe is you can make a bunch of it, and you can freeze it uncooked and cook it from frozen whenever you want to. So for this, we've got our riced potatoes, and then we just have some very basic ingredients, which again is the thing I love about Italian cooking. We'll go ahead and add 1 egg, kind of beat that, and then we're going to make sure that we have that egg coat all of the potato before we move on to adding anything else.
Yeah. So how many potatoes are we working with right now? You may have missed it.
Well, so this is 2.5 cups. You could probably get that out of 3 potatoes.
Okay. And we're using russet potatoes specifically for the starch content and the texture, correct? So, like, you don't want probably to put in a red potato or a Yukon Gold potato.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's debatable. The reason I use the russet is because when I bake it, it is very dry, and I prefer my mixture to be a little bit more dry. There are many recipes out there that boil the potatoes or use Yukon Golds. Russets happen to be one of the things that I just found the most success keeping consistent. So after the egg has been mixed in, and you almost can't even tell that I put it in there, we're going to go ahead and add some Parmesan and mix that.
Because you can't go wrong with cheese.
I missed that.
I said you can't go wrong with cheese.
So then we're going to go ahead and add some flour. We happen to be using all-purpose flour. You could use a wheat flour if that's what you prefer, or a whole wheat flour. Now, I'm not going to add the whole thing right away. And I'm also not going to mix this all with the spoon. We're going to go ahead and take it out of here and start kneading the dough together. It is a fairly quick process. And again, this is the thing that I always love to do this at home, especially when I have company over, because it's so interactive and people really get amazed with how easy this is to put together.
I would be really interested to try this recipe for potato gnocchi, because I have had past recipes. I gave up on potato gnocchi a long time ago and started making more of a ricotta style.
Sure. Yeah.
And I definitely can get that where I wanted it in terms of texture. But potato gnocchi, I don't know. I've tried some recipes that ended up really, I don't know. I felt like it was almost like it was too easy to overwork the dough.
Yep.
And you wanted something that was like really chewy.
Yeah.
So is this sort of, is it about technique? Is it about, like, is it the ingredients and the amounts that you're putting in, the ratios?
Yeah. So the ratios, I think, are more important necessarily than the techniques in this instant, because I wanted something that was easy for us to replicate, kind of no matter how busy we were. So it is mainly ratio based. So it's you don't, there's not a lot of flour going into it, so you don't really need to worry about overworking it, but it is fairly delicate in that it's a very soft dough.
Okay.
So I also, you'll see that I have this whole dough here, and then I've pulled off this smaller portion because I only want to be working a little bit at a time here. If you work too much of it, you're not going to get kind of the density that you're looking for. And then having just a nice little floured workspace is going to work out really nice. So all I do is kind of just roll it out into whatever size you want. And then I kind of just give it a little pat down, and then you can use whatever you want to go ahead and cut it. Yeah. So that's essentially what you end up with, and that's what you'll find in our restaurant. And as we continue to make that, I just have a floured baking sheet here.
Cute little.
And so I'm sorry, I missed that.
That's okay. Cute little potato pillows. That was
Potato pillows. So nice thing about this recipe here is that we're going to go ahead and make it. If you're making a ton, you can make a ton of it. You can work it all just like this. And then what I recommend to do is, if you want to save some for a later date, you freeze the sheet like this. Take it out of the freezer once the gnocchis are frozen, and then put them in a freezer bag, and they're going to stay good forever. And maybe forever is an overstatement, but they stay good in the freezer for a very long time, especially if you package them.
Well, and then ostensibly, even if you are a single person, or just, a couple of people, you could take out what you needed and cook it on a weeknight without any stress whatsoever. That's awesome.
Absolutely. So I said that there was a couple of different ways to prepare this, and so I'm going to show you the way that we would prepare it normally in the restaurant, but then I'm going to also talk you through a couple of other variations that you can do with this as soon as we get it in the water. So I have one pot going here, boiling. We're going to go ahead and put some salt in there here shortly, and then we're going to drop our gnocchis. These cook incredibly fast, especially since the potatoes are at room temperature. They do not take much longer to cook when they are frozen. So basically, we're going to wait for them to jump up to the top float, and then we're going to give them maybe 1 minute's time when they're at the top, and then we're going to transfer them to our pan to finish them. So while we have this kind of all set and ready to go, because we're not going to need much more than this here to do what we're doing, we're going to go ahead and we're going to add the butter to the ragu to finish it. So at this point, the tomato paste has thickened the overall mixture a little bit. Add back to it. And so we're just going to add some salted butter to it.
Awesome. This is such a good trick, by the way. I have an Italian friend who swore by this. And I was like, it just seems like an abomination to put butter, you know, where olive oil is the more common thing. But it is so good.
Yep. It does really make a huge difference. It cuts the acidity of the tomatoes into wine and really just kind of creates a fantastic balance overall.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on here, we're going to heat up a pan to finish. We're going to go ahead and drop our gnocchis in at this point. We've got a heavy boil going. Alright, and then we're going to take some of our finished ragu.
So we're just sort of putting it in the pan with the ragu right away.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and transfer the gnocchis that are just about to pop up to the top here. We're going to go right into our other pan. So as you can see, they pop up fairly quickly here.
Yeah. And I love that about them because it's not like you're having to test them. Like they tell you when they're done.
Yep.
Essentially.
So from here, we're just going to go ahead and we'll transfer. Another neat little trick that I like to do if you're trying for a different application is go ahead, boil them, transfer them to a baking tray, and then cool them down. And you can sear them in a little bit of butter. And so that would be like a butter and rosemary, and you will get a different, slightly, I would say it's slightly less pillowy, but it's got like a nice crunch with that really soft inside. So the nice thing about the recipe is it is very flexible in that you can prepare it a couple of different ways. It's not like you need to be married to exactly what it is we're doing here.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and finish it with just a little bit of kosher salt, a little bit of pepper, and another touch of our fennel seed. And that's really, if you come to Onesto, that's exactly what you're going to get.
And this dish, I have had this dish at Onesto, and it is delicious. So,
thank you.
To me, it's like that ultimate comfort food. Like, you know, especially for a day. And I love mushrooms, so when I eat mushrooms, I don't feel like I'm not eating meat or depriving myself of that. So
there you have it.
There you go. So that was relatively easy. So good, simple ingredients, and just mostly like with the sauce, I think it's mostly technique.
Totally.
Just steps and layers. So
absolutely.
Okay. And this is on the menu currently, correct?
It is. Yep, for lunch and dinner.
Yeah. In fact, I feel like this is kind of one of the staples that is around more often than not. Am I wrong?
No.
On the menu.
Absolutely, yeah. This is original to the restaurant. This was on the first menu that I had produced, but it's so popular that we wouldn't think of touching it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's delicious. So if you don't want to cook it at home, you can definitely go and get it at Onesto. So, or we will be posting the recipe for it, and you can try your hand at making it, and maybe you can see if you can make it better than Alex. So Alex, tell us, like, what are your hours right now?
Yeah, so Monday through Friday we are 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday we are 11 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Okay, good. Yeah, so people can grab lunch, people can grab dinner, patio seating is available. And you guys are also doing carry-out curbside pickup as well?
Absolutely.
Okay, so no matter how you want your comforting Italian fare, you can definitely get it. Now, question for you, if I'm doing carry-out, can I also grab a bottle of wine with my order?
Yes, absolutely. We encourage it.
Yeah. Well, and it's nice because you guys know what goes with what in the restaurant, so you can make good recommendations as well. So, yeah. Any other cool news? Like, you guys had a little coffee shop thing going on for a while.
Yeah, so we have, we're calling it Onesto Pacino, and it is our little cafe space that you can walk up on the street, and we serve you right out of the window. So we have giant windows in front, and so we're operating this little cafe. We are best known for the scratch-made pastries and for our Dalgona, which is a whipped coffee.
Yes, the whipped coffee, that is all the rage. On
It
the
is so good.
It is so
Are you
good.
a fan?
Pardon?
Are you a fan?
I am actually a fan. I'm a fan despite myself. Yes.
We really like the fail videos.
So those are fun to watch too. Yeah. When something like this is kind of everywhere, you see all of the beautiful pictures and what I like to call like the Pinterest fails. Yeah. So,
Yep.
but you can get a perfect one at Onesto. And what are the hours for the cafe?
So the cafe, I believe, is 6 a.m. 7 a.m. I'm sorry, 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday through Sunday.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alex, for coming and sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I think people, well, and even people like me, I mean, I told you I'm excited to try this recipe because potato gnocchi has not been my friend. But you did make it look so easy. And so I'm going to have to try that again. But definitely.
You're welcome to call me if you have any questions.
Okay, sounds good. So, okay, well, are there any questions before we kind of head out and wrap this up? It's the last call. And if there aren't any, everybody, head out to the Third Ward. Lots of great places to eat there, and Onesto is one. Even if you just drop by and grab a cup of delicious whipped coffee, it's a good thing. So thanks again, Alex, and we will talk to you soon.